Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and this is another show of Adam and Darryl View the World. And we have Darryl Murdock on the line, and we have a special guest today. Darryl, go ahead and introduce our guest for this round.
Great, Aid. So welcome, everybody. Adam, as usual, great to be on with you. And we have a special guest tonight, Daria Luedtke from WeGaw and a bunch of other things. I first met Daria when I was actually in Portugal giving a talk at a university, at the University of Lisbon. And we connected then. And who did that, little did I know that little talk there would result now in us, doing this transatlantic, web-based conference, right? So it was pre-COVID, and we had we were just chatting. She came up to me after, and she asked me like all these really good questions, and I'm like, who is this person, right? So, Darias, she's got a lot going on. Not only CTO of WeGaw, a company, but she's been involved with Women in Geospatial and a number of other activities that we're going to chat about today. So, Daria, thank you very much for making time today.
Thanks for having me at this transatlantic conversation.
Yes, you're out in Switzerland, correct? So we do have it's an international interview going on. So we do have a small, say 2 or 3 second delay, but it's incredible. It's working out well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in the French-speaking part, actually. So really close to the Lake Geneva. So we have many, many beautiful sites and mountains. And once COVID is over, I can just recommend you to come over and have a look yourself.
That would be amazing.
So you'll love this. Not that it's really terribly germane to our conversation, but my wife's family is from that neck of the woods, but on the French side. So they're from Besançon, and so it's right there, man. I guess my uncle-in-law used to be the guy who was in charge of the French-Swiss border, but on the French side.
How's your French?
Je parle un peu. Un petit peu. That's it, man. I'm done.
It's all you need, It's all you need.
And I have to take a crash course. I took 4 years of French in high school, and probably a little bit better than you, Darryl. But on the other hand, at this point I can understand it, but I can't speak it. But I have to refresh myself on it because my daughter's taking French and she wants to take a trip in the next couple of years. So,
yeah, my wife speaks fluent French, of course, because her father was French. And her mom was a French major in college. So, she still speaks French with her mom, who, even though her mom was born and raised in Ohio. So that's just, they have a lot of friends that are French, and half of her family is still in France. And so it's, we don't converse in French in our house, but every once in a while I find her on the phone speaking in French, and it's pretty cool. So if I come over, I have to bring her with me. That's the whole thing. That way I got a tour guide.
Awesome. Well, let's get started with the conversation.
That's such a bad thing. Probably won't complain. Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be the storms kicking off. We actually have a small connection blip. Are you still okay? Is still there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, delay might be extending a little bit. So I think the first topic in the conversation is we want to actually learn more about how you got from where you are, where you were and where you are today, your geospatial background, your career, basically, so talk to us about your geospatial experience, your basically your resume, right?
All right. I try to keep it short, which is not that hard because I'm not that long in the field. But it's been quite a ride. I think it's a fair thing to say. So I think as many geospatial technical people, I started out in geography. So actually did my bachelor's in geography in Germany and in the UK. So I was doing exchanges past Northern Ireland for some time. And this is kind of also geospatial interest started. I think, again, as many people enough, there's some connection to there, right? I like to be outside. I love to go and explore. And on the other side, there's, of course, a certain affinity towards technical things. So I was that kid at home to fix the router, fix the computer. Like parents always like to do that when they're out of touch with the technology. So when I learned about GIS, I felt like these two worlds came together. So this kind of physical world of geography, which I always liked because it was more tangible than, for example, chemistry or physics and tech. And I think, as many stories started, it's with a mentor. So when I had this amazing professor who was doing GIS and was as well a woman. So this was really the first time for me being fully exposed to the GIS field, and as well having like a female mentor there. And I just got sucked in, I would say. You start a bit with the geographic information system, start a bit with Q and with ARC, and then you were like, oh, there's like satellite imagery, there's like a whole nother layer I can add here. And it's always a bit like, for me, it's playful. So it's really like playing with the data and playing with the insights and just creating something interesting from pretty much nothing. So I always love this. And then, of course, doing a master's in geospatial technologies was as well a no-brainer. And the great thing about the master I did is that it allows you to as well go abroad more. So I did the Geotech Master Erasmus Mundus, which means that I had studies in 3 countries as an option. So I did kind of an international master's combining Germany, Spain, and Portugal, where I first met Darryl, and really kind of starting to dig deeper in the tech, better understand, and just as well surrounding myself with people who like the same things that I do, which I feel like is a huge influence on my life in general. And yeah, did the master's. As many graduates probably did not know where I wanted to go, if I'm honest. And in the end, I guess I took a liberty to try out different things. So I first started working for the government in Portugal. I was working on machine learning classification for land cover, which was nice, but I think it was a bit too slow for me. So government, the decision making takes a very long time. Similar resume to what was my experience at the United Nations. So I was at UN SPIDER, which is the United Nations platform for space-based information for disaster management and emergency response, like rolls right off your tongue, where I did disaster and emergency assessments. And yeah, again, like just great tech, way too slow for an environment. So you couldn't really innovate, you couldn't implement better solutions when you had a good idea, for example. So when I saw the opening to join WeGaw, which was a startup of 2 people when I joined, so I was literally the first employee of the company, I was like, yeah, maybe that works. And especially because my journey with WeGaw started out with a contract with the European Space Agency. It was really cool, but it was really intense. But now we're here. I've been with a startup for almost 2.5 years at this point, which is already pretty great. If you know how many startups die after 2 years, after 5 years, it's a lot.
How about after 6 months?
5 days,
Right. The fact that you're around 2.5 years means that you beat 250% attritions, which means that puts you in the upper 20% of all startups. How about that?
I'm sure my CEO would love to hear that and use that for like a slogan later on.
That's a good venture pitch. Hey, we survived this long. You
right,
guys
you're still around, Yeah. So how big is tell us a little bit more about WeGaw and what your role there is as CTO, right? Because you're still there after a bit of time, right? As employee number 1. So what keeps you there? What are you digging?
I'm digging the vibe. No, I'm joking, but I kind of do. So what is really nice about WeGaw is we work on using satellite imagery to optimize renewable energy. So since I'm also really interested in sustainability and SDGs, for me it's like a really worthy cause I can contribute to. So that helps, of course, with the day-to-day motivation, because you're like, yeah, I'm building something big, I'm doing something good. So that's pretty nice. But yeah, I guess the vibe thing was on point. So I really love the team.
Yeah.
The great thing about a small team is, you can handpick employees. You know each other really well. I think all of us have a very strong friendship on top of the professional relationship, which is very helpful in our case, because it's just opening all the doors of communication, which is key in the end in a startup, because you have so many things to do and so little resources. If it's money, if it's people, if it's time. So yeah, it's the mission and it's the team.
Yeah, I think the people part. Let's talk about that a little, because you mentioned a key word there in my experience, and Adam and I work on a number of different projects together, and the one thing that I always find, it doesn't matter whether it's a startup or whether it's an established aerospace company, or any kind of company. You mentioned the number one key word that I always find, that when people are actually enjoying their experience and whatever they're doing, communication. Can you talk a little bit about communication styles and how important communication is? Because I know it's not maybe a geospatial thing, but you know what? We have to be able to communicate our data products and services that our companies offer. So talk to us a little bit about communication. What's that look like in your company and external to your clients?
Oh, that's a very complex thing. So I would say internally, it is most important that everybody just has the best for the company in mind. So we all try to leave our egos at home, so the criticism can be dealt with directly. And as well, it's such a small company, which means that there's only a hierarchy on paper, right? We don't actually have any bosses or employees in like the day-to-day. But even then, everyone's input is extremely valuable, and everybody should be comfortable sharing their opinion, and as well saying when they don't know stuff, because that's one thing that you learn the hard way in a startup, is you do not know how to deal with 90% of the situations that you get thrown in. So you always need to respect each other's expertise in that sense, and be able to just take that input and try to make the best of it with that big goal in mind.
That's really one of the things that I'm really curious about when I talk to folks that are in small businesses, startups, is how do you deal with ambiguity? Because ambiguity, when we talk about communication, ambiguity is that way. So you hit on something I think that's really key for our audience is, one of my favorite phrases, Adam hears it all the time from me. I don't know. That's my phrase. I don't know. Right? It's not, oh, let me pontificate. No, it's like, I don't know. Let me go find. But you know what? I'm probably one phone call away from finding the person. So it's actually 2 phone calls. Me calling somebody, or going down the hallway to talk to somebody, or IMing somebody, or sending an email, and them asking maybe one other person. But you know what? Saying that you don't know can be one of the more empowering things that I've learned. I don't know. Have you found being able to say I don't know to be hard or easy?
Easy. I mean, that's the only way, right? Because that's the only way to really find a solution in the end. And again, as you said, this is also where having a good network is very beneficial.
Yep. And that's, so that goes back to the communication piece. So, tell us a little bit more about WeGaw. What is it you actually do as an organization?
So, as an organization, we try to leverage artificial intelligence and satellite imagery to optimize renewable energy. So to be a bit more in detail here is we have a strong focus on radar data. So we mostly use Sentinel-1 imagery to extract information for hydropower at the moment. So we're looking at, for example, water basin height, snow depth, and in the end working towards the snow water equivalent, which is super important for hydropower because that's pretty much just all the water stored in snow. And it's so crucial because as the world is transitioning from like crude energy to clean energy is something that you can't really store. You can store the power from clean energy if you have like battery facilities that are pretty massive. But the power itself, you can't do that like with wind. You can't be like, oh, I need some more wind today, or the sun should shine a bit more. I don't like those clouds. So you need to do good planning,
You'll love this. We did one of our last episodes. We actually talked to the CEO of a gentleman named Don, who's the CEO of True Weather. And when I talked to him, I actually play softball with him. And when I talk to him, when we get rained out, I'm like, Don, you're a weatherman. Aren't you supposed to be able to fix this? Fix it. No more rain.
Yeah, make the sun shine now. But yeah, it's a real issue. I mean, all jokes aside, right? Because like energy companies, they build on having these calculations, these models, how much energy they have for their population. And for some countries, like, for example, New Zealand, can't really import and export energy because they don't have many neighbors. It's super, super important that they have perfect overview of what they have at their disposal.
So what you're saying is right now, a difference between traditional energy and renewable energy is the traditional energy, you can actually stock up and store potential energy stockpiles like coal, or, you can have actually storage centers before you actually use it, where renewables, you use as is. There's no, right now there isn't, and that's what you're working on, but there's no way to predict how much energy that you can potentially get the next day or the next day after that or the next week or the month, right?
Exactly. So it's hard to predict and it's hard to store, but we still need it. So yeah, it's very interesting right now. As I said, it's hydropower mostly, but we like to explore a bit more next years and also look at, for example, wind power and solar power, because we really believe that the future is there. I mean, if you see what countries are like submitting resolutions, for example, that are in line with the SDGs regarding climate change. So you have more and more funding for green energy, more and more countries setting themselves deadlines to have a certain percentage of green energy as a ratio of their total till like 2025 or 2030. So it's only going to be growing, and it's good that way.
Yeah. Wind is something that I've always been interested in. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I know it's maybe a next year project, but I have a couple ornithologist friends that are absolutely against wind farms, right? Because typically when the sighting goes in, they're putting them right in the slipstream of where all the birds migrate, right? Their migratory paths. What's the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt aspect of dealing with things like turbine farms, et cetera, when it comes to wind power? Any idea?
I think it's really hard to say, right? Because this is as well something that's maybe cultural or something that's related to your geography. What I can say to that is I think people have a lot of misconceptions. So for example, this whole it's ruining the landscape. Right? What would you rather have, like a wind farm ruining a landscape or nuclear power ruining your water? And in the end, it's of course to optimize these existing technologies, right? Because wind farms can always be improved, which we're not there yet. Not there yet at all. But then, of course, it's going to be really interesting to see how geographical information is going to feed into that. For example, if we can improve the wind models, if we can improve their forecasts. And I think here, I don't know, if if they reached the US, but we had the European Remote Sensing Association had like a conference last week. It's called Expand EO. And they were nominating so-called EO evangelists. And one of them is actually for wind, for energy. So the idea behind this is to have somebody that can kind of educate the industry on the benefits of Earth observation for the specific field. And I'm extremely curious to see what changes are going to be implemented there.
Yeah, it'd be great. It's like, I think that may be something, Adam, we want to be able to put in one of the links when we're done today is if we can get that list of folks from you, Daria, or a list of the evangelists. We'd love to be able to post that or repost that.
Really easy. I also know the evangelist on energy, so if you want to talk to her, just let me know.
So going back to the storage problem here, but the fact that you we'll call it monitor, I'm assuming with SAR, some of the either the frozen water up in the mountains or the changes in the water flow, of course, of the different waterways before it reaches, I'm sure, various dams. How does climate change affect some of these storage? I imagine, the fact that some of these glaciers are melting, that's actually eliminating potentially a huge storage supply for a lot of these potential hydroelectric areas, right? Is that the case as well?
It is the case as well, and it's actually a little bit more complex than that, because we have, for example, connections in British Columbia, in Canada, and they have a network of stations to monitor their snow depth to be able to estimate their storage capacity for the winter. But the problem is with climate change, the snow line retracted kind of up the mountains, and now most of their stations are not actually within the snow anymore. It's because there is quite little snow left at these lower altitudes, and this is normally the easiest location to install these stations, right? Because you need kind of an even surface, something stable to install your technology. So this is an issue. Of course, glacier melting is massive anywhere, because one argument that you might hear is that, oh, but this year was a lot of snow. But snow is not the same as actual solid water frozen in the glacier. It doesn't just like magically regrow. And another issue there with current industry is that a lot of the models are actually based on the last 20 years of data. So I'm not sure if you know how the hydrological modeling is working, but it's literally that you feed them the data and they make correlations and regressions based on these last 20 years. And now that we're dealing with more extremes, like hotter temperatures, less snow, more snow, these models have a much harder time making sense of all the data. And this is actually where we can add value with Earth observation, because it is something that you can just feed the model near real time and give an indication to what's going on like right now.
Are you familiar with a gentleman named Bruce Monnia? Have you ever met Bruce?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we should have a conversation about Bruce. Bruce is interesting. He spent 40 plus years at USGS, and he is one of their chief glaciologists. And he spent a lot of his career up in Alaska and just wrote a book that's literally about that thick. Let's see, that thick, big book. I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of pages, where he actually had started out with aerial photography and then, gradually got into commercial remote sensing, and actually can track the receding glaciers over time, and has done so for the last 40 something years. I'm really curious too. My son, he's in Alaska. He's at the University of Fairbanks in Alaska. He's working there. He's applying to grad school this fall. He's interested in herpetology. And there's not a whole lot of herps up there, and there's a few in the southern chunk of Alaska, but where he is in Fairbanks, there's pretty much nothing there. But he and I got talking just a couple of days ago, and talking about what he'd like to look at, and like, okay, what's a 2 degrees Celsius global temperature change due to herpetology populations in Alaska? Wow. And in that area where he's at, and we were already in climate is what we were really talking about. And it's very dry in Fairbanks, believe it or not. And, that's one of the concerns is as temperature changes like that, we're going to have lots of weird changes, not only in available water, but in the ecotomes themselves. The speciation is going to change. Are you modeling any of those species changes? Or are you really just looking at the water loading and the geology and the hydrogeology of the location you're working?
We are really focused on the hydrology, but I read something similar about the Alps, actually, the impact of climate change on biodiversity here. And it's extremely interesting how complex the whole thing is. For example, that you have certain plants connected to soil stability with the root system, and if these plants move up or move down, how it's not going to be the right fit for the type of soil that you find at these different altitudes. It's extremely interesting.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on growth from a human habitat standpoint? Now that we have areas that were, maybe too cold for most people, right? And not for everybody, but a lot of folks, if you're not in a temperate area, they're not really that terribly interested in living there, right? It's where 90% of the global population lives within 100 miles of the ocean, right? So, and the available land that we have globally, there's only so much of it. What do you see in terms of people moving to areas where, when temperature changes, and okay, now there's not a glacier then anymore? Is that a discussion that's happening in Europe about, can you keep the areas that were previously glaciated from being developed? Is that, I don't even know, how does that work?
I haven't heard that discussion here. Many of our glacier areas are under natural protection, so for us, it's not really an option.
Okay.
Very interesting. I never heard about that. Is this a thing in the US?
I don't know. I just thought about it as we're sitting here. I'm like, well, typically when there's a flat area that just got scrubbed away by millions of years of, creating karst platforms. If I'm a homesteader and I've got a flat piece of land that doesn't have snow on it anymore, why wouldn't I build there? I don't know.
To be fair, I kind of hope not.
Well, actually, that's something that came up in the Geography 2050 conference this last November with one of the individuals, I believe he was from Russia, briefed on the impacts of the melting permafrost and how that's affecting that entire northern area. It's a combination of two things. One, the permafrost it's not necessarily producing areas that people can build. Matter of fact, it's the complete opposite, where you got these much hard grounded regions where now you actually have issues where they're developing sinkholes, or entire towns are under threat of collapsing under the weight of, the permafrost just basically going away. So it's a similar issue. It's a different but similar issue in that, how do you adapt towards the changing environments there? But kind of going back to what you all are doing I'm kind of really curious about two things. Is you're performing these types of metrics and machine learning on this SAR data coming in, and it's just right now. So two questions. One, what other sensors are you working to provide other than Sentinel? And then two, who are your customers for this type of data? Who actually takes advantage of the types of business and data that you're producing?
So regarding imagery, we also use optical data. So some of our algorithms, so there we use, for example, Sentinel-2, MODIS information, VS information, Landsat information. But in the end, we noticed that SAR imagery just allows us to extract more useful information. The optical, especially in mountainous regions, in the Alps or British Columbia, it's extremely limited just with cloud coverage. We ran some tests and there were just weeks, literally weeks, where we couldn't see a thing, which is not very helpful. And regarding other information, we of course integrate as well sensor information like ground data. Well, you guys know how interconnected everything is. So of course you also have land cover information that's integrated and climate information. It's just depending on the product, like a whole big mess. And that's kind of the scary thing. And the beauty, I think, of AI is it's a bit of a black box, but it can really do magic. You know, it's pretty amazing.
So other than Sentinel, do you take advantage of commercial providers out there, such as, I mean, because it's right in sort of your backyard, like Airbus's Terrace RX, or does the price point come in as an issue right there? I'm kind of really curious as well of, you have this amazing technology, amazing algorithms that you're working on, and what are the bigger blockers for looking at other sensor types that might actually be higher quality, but you can't use them for whatever reason?
Currently, we're only talking about commercial partnerships, and this is what it will have to be in the end, to have like a partnership that they get a percentage of the information that we sell. Because especially high resolution radar imagery, if it's Airbus or it's Capella Space or ICE-Eye, it is very costly, especially if you're looking into large scale monitoring. And in hydropower, you look at basins, right? And basins can be many, many square kilometers. Can have like, in Canada, the basins are massive. It's like a little country here in Europe. So monitoring this with high resolution data is super hard. And regarding blockages, I think right now we are not really in a place when it comes to industry acceptance and the willingness to invest in those things. So right now we can provide these services.
A lightning hit might have just happened. She has a storm going through her area, and it might have just interfered with her connection.
I saw that flash. That was pretty spectacular, right?
We're waiting for the connection to come back from Daria here, so we'll give it a minute or two. We might have to hit her up on the side. She might have to reconnect. Yeah, hopefully, her internet just didn't die on her.
Well, if it did, we can reconnect. You know, the thread that you were just pulling is one I'm really terribly interested in. I'm guessing our audience is also. We're starting to talk about data. Yeah, I think she dropped. She'll come back in. I'm curious from the standpoint of machine learning AI, right? So she's been talking about AI, and we haven't really talked about the difference between ML and AI. And I really would like to understand: is it really AI that they're working, or would she consider it really more ML? And if it's AI, what data and what proportion of data are being used for doing their setup and their training and their fine tuning of the AI, and how much then do you have left to be able to actually run your AI?
Well, and I'm fascinated with the potential aspect of identifying these industry blockers, because a lot of the business model wrapped around buying imagery is around buying imagery by the drink, not by the business model of, hey, I need to perform trend analysis over massive areas of land, and it's not cost conducive to buy it by $5,000 an image for 25 square kilometers, right. Something like that.
Yeah, and in addition to that, as you were calling a blocker, one of the business challenges is that many of the commercial data providers have offshoot analytic arms now that think, well, that's our job, right? And we should be working in that particular space. So that's another topic that I'd love to be able to kind of dig into, is that, okay, so what's the competition look like, right? Is it the CDPs themselves? Are there other organizations that are doing something similar?
Well, she also might have hinted at another blocker coming down to licensing concerns, because it's not just about a cost factor. Is some of the newer SAR providers, such as I just talked to Umbra a little bit ago, yesterday or the day before, just keeping up with them, how they're doing. A lot of them are starting to incorporate a Creative Commons for when someone buys their images, so they can do anything what they want. That would be a game changer, because
it would be if they actually let you do that, right?
The restrictions on buying an image and what you can do with it are tremendous. Like, you actually have to state what you're going to use it for, and based off of what you use it for, the cost might just exceed exponentially increase. So And so the whole training our machines to do something. See, this is a realization for the audience. We have the technology to do quite a bit. The problem right now, I think, is more business logic. Our business logic hasn't kept up with the current technology and the current demands.
That's fair. That's fair. Whether it's the business logic or the business model, or it is the technology itself. Because, okay, so you set a price point for either your data, your product, or your service. In some cases, you have use cases that you've actually proven out over time. In other cases, you set a price point for a specific kind of usage that I didn't even know. No one's ever done that before.
And Daria is back. So, Daria, welcome back. I figured a storm may have messed up your connection there, right?
Yeah, I had to reconnect, and now I'm tethering over my phone.
Oh, wow! So your internet connection just completely dropped on you?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how far we can take this. Darryl and I just got off on a small side discussion about kind of the blockers in terms of business logic. We were just talking about how potential price points of traditional, we'll call it SAR acquisition through commercial, such as buying imagery by the drink for maybe, it doesn't make sense for the new business models needed to adjust for things like machine learning, as well as things like potential licensing concerns for buying the imagery as well, haven't kept up with the current requirements of the times.
Very true. And as well, what I was trying to say before I drop out is that it's really hard to make such an established and very successful and profitable industry pay for innovation, because it kind of worked well for them until now. So one of the main things that helps us engage with these industries to keep our own costs low and to keep their costs low, therefore. So using open imagery like Sentinel-1 is then extremely helpful, of course, because we can still provide insights without actually having to charge them huge amounts.
No, you brought up a good point. It states also the importance of we'll call it publicly funded sensors, and like Sentinel, or you have others out there like Landsat in the United States. So helping the governments realize that until a commercial industry comes up to speed, we need continue to have public solutions out there to innovate off of.
Exactly. And well, you were asking as well about the potential users. And this is as well a bit diverse, right? Because you can, on the one hand, use this information to improve your generation. So utilities, power generation is interested in this, but you can also, of course, use it for energy trading. So you might have heard that there was this announcement some months ago that water is now traded officially at the stock market, right? The exchange market, as a commodity, which, well, caused mixed reactions, obviously. But this is, for example, where this information can as well be useful.
That's that opens up a can of worms in terms of the type of discussions we're going to have now. I had no idea. Honestly, I didn't keep track of water.
Water is going to be the new oil. I remember 20 years ago or more than that having this discussion with my mom about and there were water issues then. It's not that long ago, and all over the globe, and acutely in our western states. And in the Southwest, we have all these folks that are living in a desert, and they continue to pump the groundwater out, and some of it evaporates and some of it gets used, and between Oregon and California, we have all sorts of water wars going on between ranchers and people that are that have moved into an area that was pretty dry, and so it's when you have 100 years or more of usage there. And now all of a sudden, there's going to be a whole nother game because there's not enough water. Okay, so then you get into the water rights issues are going to be massive, and so having it so it's a traded commodity actually helps, in my opinion, anyhow, shine a spotlight on it at least to be able to say, hey, look, we need to really kind of pay attention to this resource. It's a resource and it's a shared resource that we all have, right? We all have to deal with, and so it's going to be interesting how it comes out. You know, so while you were away briefly, one of the other conversations we had was, could you talk to us a little bit about, in your viewpoint, of the difference between machine learning and AI, and how much of each are you really doing right now? And, you know, where do you see the transition between ML and AI heading in the next 3 to 5 years?
So from my understanding, you have artificial intelligence as kind of the umbrella term for everything. And then you have machine learning as a subdivision of this. And then a subcategory of that is deep learning. And this is kind of where the company, where WeGaw is working most. So we're mostly working with convolutional neural networks, GANs, and all these things. So we really focus on this specific section that allows us to really deal well with imagery, and as well, as you guys know, geospatial data has a special data. You have this kind of labeled and spatially continuous issues that cannot be tackled with every single algorithm. So for example, I did my master thesis on land cover classification with random forests specifically. So why random forest, right? Because it is an algorithm that is adjusted to this type of categorical input. So where I actually see the industry heading right now, but of course this might just be a bit limited by my own network and by my own work, is towards deep learning. In general, what I find super interesting about the industry is that I don't think you have such a good chance of finding a job anymore without AI or programming knowledge. So when I see job openings and online or with the WinWin Geospatial website, where we also post job openings, it's a lot of focus on Python. It's a lot of focus on AI. So I really do see the industry developing a lot in that direction, with maybe a few very happy individuals that can just focus on cartography.
Well, and that's a good segue. As we're approaching the last third of our time with you, let's get into some of the importance of community within the GIS and community, right? So you just named off a few right there. You're involved with the Women in Geospatial group. Can you talk a little bit more about them and any other groups that you're involved with?
Sure. So Women Geospatial, I hope that everybody who's listening heard of them by now. So we are pretty much an organization of women and other underrepresented genders in geospatial field who are trying to kind of connect and help each other to also create more leadership that is diverse in the world of geo. So our kind of mission is to unite, to inspire, and to empower. And for that, we have a variety of activities. So we have, for example, the speaker database, where women can register as potential speakers for conferences in their region, because there's still an issue that you have the so-called many conferences, so panels with exclusively men on them. And I know that part of our mission as a community is to have a bit more diversity there. We have career mentorship, which I can recommend to any young women in the geo field. So we are offering once a year a mentorship program where you can either be matched with a more advanced professional in similar field as yours to get advice, to get input from them over a 6-month period. Or you can also have a peer mentorship with, women plus in similar industries and geographies as you, to kind of just exchange and work on something together. And lastly, we also have, actually just published today, probably didn't see that yet, the ambassador program. So we're also trying to build regional representation on each continent as of now. So we, for example, have one for the Middle East or Oceania, North America. I am actually the ambassador for Western Europe. So I'll be trying to organize events and coordinate the members here to maybe meet up after COVID at some point to just facilitate the networking and the interaction. So plenty of things to do. We're always very happy about any support and new members, of course. So it's really cool. For me personally, it had a massive impact on my life and on my career, really.
Yeah, I was stumbling around on LinkedIn about 2 weeks ago, and I went to your LinkedIn profile, and for some reason I clicked on a couple of links, and somebody that you were connected to popped up, and they were extolling your virtues as a mentor. So thank you for not only talking about and basically bringing up the topic of women in geospatial, but for actually putting your time where your rhetoric is and volunteering your time as a mentor, because they were, I don't know if you saw it or not, but they were gushing pretty hard and they couldn't say enough good things about you.
I think I know who that was, and I am happily to gush back. It's a very good relationship we're having. No, definitely, but I think this is what makes it so powerful, right? If you advocate for what you believe in and what you're involved in, that's the best kind of the best action you can take.
I think that's an important thing for any group, right? Because it's not just about it's when you ask people to volunteer for something, they don't always know how they want to participate. But you've essentially given people a platform. You've given women a platform that they make themselves discoverable, and also kind of a guided approach of, oh, you can become a speaker here, or you can become a mentor here. And it's not all that hard. All you have to do is just simply participate. And before, in other groups, sometimes you can become a volunteer, and the barrier to entry once you're in is still really, really confusing. Like, what am I supposed to do when I'm a member here? How do I participate? How do I talk to people? What's the forum? So it can be a little bit confusing. And we do have a comment, by the way, from apparently from St. Louis. One of our watchers from St. Louis is asking a question. What are the barriers to getting more women involved in geospatial panels, leadership discussions? Are they not invited, not aware, or don't feel comfortable speaking up? That's an audience question.
Tough question.
Right, you can pick any part of that, right? That's a great multi-tiered question, right?
And I believe the same individual had a comment recently complimenting you on your terminology of manel for and she's like, it's not, now she's going to use that because that's a term now that's apparently it's right. It's an appropriate stereotype.
Don't laugh. We used to call them doodles. So there you go.
But I mean, I do believe it's kind of a little bit of all. So there's a lack of high-level representation for women in the field. Like, a lot of the really influential people in the geo world are men. It's how it is right now.
So is a lack of visible role models? Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. This is as well what the mentorship tries to support, right? Even if you don't have like this kind of a high executive level, far away role model, at least you maybe have a mentor that is in a position that you would like to be in maybe 5, 10 years, 20 years time.
Yeah.
So just there to have this kind of inspiration is really helpful. Not aware and not feel comfortable speaking up, I feel like are very connected too, because women are, from what I have experienced, not as active, for example, on social media platforms or talking about their achievements as much. Another thing that I noticed while hiring, so I was in charge of hiring an EO specialist for the company last year, is I actively reached out to women communities to just have more women to apply to the job. And it didn't help. It didn't help. In the end, I had maybe one female to like 4 male applicants, even though I specifically reached out to Women Geospatial, I reached out to other communities. The applications didn't come in. And I can imagine it's a bit similar for panels, for example, that people just don't think that they're qualified.
Oh, that's unfortunate too, because I can tell you from doing panels, I don't always want the top level individual because they are often so far disconnected from everybody else. They're such a higher level. They talk about big strategies, big things. I'm like, but people are missing the story in between, how to get from there to here. And a lot of those happens at a much lower level. And the people who need to talk about that are much closer at a different layer. And so I would actually put more value on those individuals in many cases than the person right up on top. And so it's unfortunate. So how would you suggest we put value or show people that they're more valuable than they realize?
It's really hard. I think role models will help.
Yeah.
And as well, a type of role model that does not present themselves as perfect, right? Because one thing that, for example, women can see in the media is that the career woman who also has 7 children, but never talks about the nannies. So it has to be achievable. It has to be achievable for young women. It has to be relatable. And there need to be people out there who are maybe able to provide some actionable steps on how to get there, and not just be kind of vague and elusive about how it happened. So it's also about just being there and giving advice and being present.
No, that's a good topic. Thanks for covering that. That's I think these are important issues to bring up. And I know in the past, last year we had a couple entrepreneurship or quote women in business leadership positions on a panel or two. And I know we want to bring them back, or we still want to start a series just to talk about their experiences, their blockers, et cetera. So to have you talk a little bit more about that or pop in one of those panels in the future would really be wonderful as well. Especially if you've already been established as a mentor within the Women in Geospatial group. Once in a couple more comments from our peanut gallery, not to be insulting. They're awesome. I love people watching the show. Strong panel preparation is key. Important responsibility on the panel moderators and sponsors. Helps all unrepresented voices feel comfortable finding their value. So that was from, once again, one of our individuals out in St. Louis. So let's see. And one other aspect from our notes here, talk to me about who and what what GeoGeneva is.
GeoGeneva is a great example how you are never alone with what you want, and you just have to find a community to ask for it together. So GeoGeneva is a meetup that I founded with Stephen Ramage from Geo, Group on Earth Observation, which you might know because he's very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and Gregorio Giuliani from the University of Geneva. So it all happened because I could not find geoprofessionals in my region. So I felt very isolated in the field, which is, again, like a side effect of the startup, to be fair. That you don't have any professionals around you to ask questions and share your expertise. So I started reaching out to some people, like, is there a community? Is there a meetup somewhere? And unfortunately, there wasn't. So I found these 2 super experienced, amazing, high-profile individuals who are actually happy to found this with me. So we had the first meeting in March, second one coming up in July. At some point, we would like to meet in person, but for now, it's online. And we just wanted to create kind of a space for professionals from different industries to exchange. Because we see, for example, that many topics around sustainability or Earth observation are only discussed from, for example, the academic perspective or only the industry perspective. So the idea behind this was really to have me as industry, Stephen as NGO, and Greg as academia to discuss certain topics in the first meeting. And now kind of get speakers from the community to do something similar, to really have that exchange, because I think it's easy to feel isolated in your experiences once you are already established in a certain industry. So far, so good. Last time I had 40 people coming, which was pretty great. We hope, of course, this time a few more. And just to have this kind of feedback from from the masses, from the crowd, it's really great because
40 people is a good
feel
start
alone.
starting
Wow.
from zero. So
Yeah. Well, you let us know when it's back in person, and Adam and I will come on over and hang out with you guys.
oh yeah, just a drive down the road, right?
A short flight.
Short flight.
Short flight in one direction. It's a lot longer in the other way. It takes like 9 hours one way, 3 hours one the other way. I don't understand.
Well, I'll with our last 5 minutes remaining, I want to give one. Well, Darryl, do you have any last minute questions that you want to bring up to Daria, or Daria, do you have any last comments and advice you want to give our audience about all the work you've been doing, or some of the groups that you're involved with? Either one of you.
So I'll jump in and give you some time to formulate your last thoughts, and we'll give you the last word because that's how we'd like to roll. I've enjoyed this chat, and I'm left with way more questions that I'd love to be able to ask. The question that keeps coming back to me is what does fun look like for you? Because it seems like you're involved in so many things, right? And so everybody usually gravitates towards something that they like to do, and you seem to have your fingers in so many things. What is it that's fun for you? And you got to pick one thing. You can't pick all of those things.
Can I be a bit philosophical? Is that okay?
Sure. It's like we have rules here.
Cool. I like no rules. No, fun for me is exploring. So I just like the feeling of meeting new people, learning new things. So this can be either topics or like great women I meet through the women geospatial community. It can be language learning. Like I have to learn French here. So it's just this kind of feeling of exploring and growth. It's what I really enjoy. And what I really, really hope I can do at a different scale once COVID restrictions are not that present anymore here.
No, that's a great answer. Adam, we're going to take that entire little snippet right there, that 1 minute snippet. That's it right there. That's awesome.
I'll find some nice Mead music and release it and see what we can do with
it. We'll get Charlie to do some backing music for you.
That's the nugget. Yeah, but just to wrap it up, once, of course, again, thank you guys, because I think it's super important to have more awareness and education on the geospatial sector. This is, as I mentioned, for example, the hydropower industry, really still one of the weak points to see all the benefits that geospatial technology has and can also produce when being adapted in the world. So, thanks, guys.
Oh, absolutely. And if you have any examples you'd like to share regarding some of the work you've done, just kind of little samples here and there we can share with our audience, that would be incredible. Because hearing you talk about it gets my interest going, like, wow, what kind of work, what kind of mashups, what kind of data results have you gotten? And if you have any just kind of little snapshots of here's a trend, that's what's going on in this, how we analyze this river and how it impacts this dam. That's a really good just community use case. Just the fact that it could inspire younger folks who are trying to figure out what options are in the career field, what kind of impact they can have on a bigger scale. So once again, it's incredible work you're doing. So I want to thank you for coming on with us.
Yeah, thank you, Daria. I really appreciate it.
I'm sure we stay in touch. Again, thanks for the opportunity. I'd be happy to share some information. And just like the last message I would like to give is that young professionals also established and trying to learn something new, just reach out. There are communities everywhere. If there is no community, don't hesitate to build one, because it's extremely powerful. And there are normally thousands of people that have the same desire as you. Like, we're all not that special. We're all kind of similar in these ways. So just make it happen.
Absolutely.
Great advice.
Well, thanks for joining us, Daria. And once again, this is Adam and Darryl, and Adam and Darryl View the World, with another amazing guest with us this round. And we look forward to someday talking with you again about all of your work.
would be a pleasure.